So yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's fantastic to have another Talking Landscape Photography episode tonight. And tonight's all about Adelaide and surrounds. And we've got a extremely talented photographer joining us today or tonight. And that's Dylan Toe. And I've been following Dylan's work maybe longer than maybe any other photographer, actually. Back in the day when he was posting on Flickr and things like that, I remember, and I was living in Adelaide in South Australia at the time too, so I was seeing sort of all of the work that he was getting into, and the quality of his images were amazing even back then, and it's still continued on to this sort of day. So we're really stoked to have him on the show. I've also been lucky enough to do a few trips with Dylan, which has been a lot of fun as well in Tasmania. So I might hand it over to Dylan maybe to maybe introduce himself and talk maybe a little bit about his experience living in Adelaide and photographing around Adelaide, if you don't mind, Dylan.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess one of the things to mention is that Adelaide is like a perfect living place to be, and it's a good base to kind of branch out and have a look. And I think Adelaide probably has one of the best sunsets in the world. I take a series of debrised shots from my backyard every now and then when I can't make it out anywhere, and they probably have the most vibrant sunrises and sunsets of all time.
Why is that, Dylan?
I don't know, because it's directly west facing and there's nothing, it's so flat. It must be just because there's nothing kind of obstructing the sun and so forth.
And I guess you've also got a lot of those arid plains and dust and things like that, maybe, that give the right atmospheric balance to create those colors.
Yeah. So it's I was certainly spoiled for color. Every couple of nights you just head out the backyard and appreciate it. Though I would like to do more photography is more of a hobby, an enthusiast kind of thing. I've never done it full time at any point in time because I do love my day job, which is being a doctor. And if that kind of loses its passion, then I might consider going more into photography. But I think part of the pleasure of photography for me, it's a good release valve. And so, whenever I do get to go out, a chance to have a shoot, it's an opportunity to just get out there and unwind. And I've got a lot of pent up energy that I can expend when I'm on these trips and so forth that you just can't do when you're within four walls in a hospital. And throughout all of this, Marianne, my wife, and I started off doing this before we had kids. And as we've had kids, we've had to adapt to, first of all, trying to photograph with infants. And then trying to photograph with people who constantly tug on you for attention all the time. And now we're transitioning to the phase where perhaps, you could even leave them behind and they can do some stuff for a bit, or leave them at a location they can be responsible for themselves, which is kind of what we've been doing at the moment.
How old are they, Dylan?
They're 9 and 6 at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good age. They're a lot of fun at this point in time, but also becoming a little bit more independent now as well. So that's all good, and they love doing stuff in nature wherever we take them on our trips and so forth, with that very kind of heavy focus on being in natural places and so forth. So yeah, I think that's probably where I'm at. And in terms of my modus operandi for taking pictures, it's whatever's before me. I like going to visit places that I've been to lots before. That doesn't stop me from going, because it's always therapeutic to go to those places that I have previously enjoyed. And whenever I get a chance to go to somewhere new, even if I don't come away with anything that's a good picture, it's always an opportunity just to go exploring and explore the massive coastline around South Australia, especially now the kids are a bit bigger as well and we can leave them for longer. Even when we're on family trips, I can kind of depart and do some more adventurous stuff while they're back with mum, or if mum wants to go shooting, I hang around with them. So it's a bit of a balance.
I still remember seeing some of those photographs of you out doing some seascapes, and you had a sort of a baby carrier on your back, and one of your children actually on your back like that. And I think it says a lot about your determination to still get out there and enjoy the photography passion, and not let that sort of hold you back.
Yeah, I look, Marianne asked me to mention this. She has a celebrity crush on Chris Evans, Captain America. And so in our early days, we put out an article about photographing with infants. And so it got viral and went onto Board Panda, that
Yeah.
site.
Oh, yeah,
And she screenshotted a tweet from Chris Evans saying these parents got it right. And I'm like, she's like holding it so dearly. I'm like, but what about us? But anyway, that's a very, I think it's a good vindication for her about the kind of stuff we were doing at the time, just trying to get out there and having a lot of fun doing it. But it wasn't without its challenges.
Oh, no doubt. No
Tanties, feeding them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Any budding image makers among the prodigy?
Not really. I mean, we did give Charlotte that's my oldest daughter. She's nearly 9. We did give her like a little compact camera that was waterproof, and she did for a while try to take a lot of pictures, but now they're more interested in just interacting with nature, and they're watching a lot of like, Discovery and Dino Dana and all that kind of things, pretending they're prehistoric dinosaurs on the beaches and things like that. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
Awesome. Well, what we might do is maybe get you to bring up some of your images, and we can sort of talk about some of the places that you've photographed around, and maybe just talk.
Yeah,
we're looking at that.
No
Some of your photography styles and your approach to photography as well.
Yep. I'll just bring out the local region first, and I'll share screen in a second.
Yep.
Worth mentioning, of course, Dylan, that your dear wife Marianne's a fantastic photographer in her own right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Look, I've been trying to get her back into it, but she's actually found a bit of a niche doing pastel arts as well and other kind of artistic media. So she's got a lot of very that's her workstation behind me there. So we kind of separated our room to hers and his. So I do all the editing on this side, and she does all her stuff on the other side. So that's the kind of stuff she's been doing at the moment. But certainly on the more recent trips, on occasions I've been looking after the kids, and she's been the one taking the pictures again. So I think that's good, trying to get her back into it, because in terms of who actually established like Everlook as a name, she was the one who kind of put a lot of energy into that, while I just kind of went around taking pictures essentially. So credit where credit's due. She's responsible for a lot of our names, so to speak.
Fantastic team.
Absolutely. You don't come across that too often.
Yeah, Luke. Nick, do you get any of that?
Any what? Sorry.
Any teamwork on the photography side, or it's like you just bugger off and go do your thing, honey?
Yeah, that's it. I just bugger off. I bugger off. She holds the ship, and I'm very grateful for her allowing me to do that on occasion. It's a wonderful thing. Yes, yeah. But the kids, interestingly, on Dylan talking about the kids getting into it, my kids haven't shown a great interest, although my daughter is starting to show a real interest in it now, and she's 9. I've sort of dragged her over to the computer and asked her to go through my photos and pick which one she likes, and then get her to talk about why she likes them. And I think in the future, she'll probably have a camera in her hand too. But it's funny, because you give them a camera and they get enthusiastic about it for a short period of time, but there's so much going on in their lives, they really don't know what their passion is, and they flit from one thing to another. So I think it's probably a little bit later in their development where they start developing strong interests in certain hobbies and stuff like that. But I'll be encouraging the camera where I can.
Sorry, one of my programs just died. I'll just put it all up in
fun, isn't it?
I'm gonna segue. There's this ongoing joke with me, with my half of my head disappearing into the back of the screen, using that crappy virtual background, and I spent about 3.5 months, Lukey, trying to get a webcam working, and I even got this R5, and I still couldn't even get it to work, and I just managed to sneak it through like a minute before. So I'm excited to have an episode where my head doesn't half disappear into the background for the very first time. So
yeah, it looks fantastic, Paul. You've done a great job.
I didn't realise you were such a good-looking chap, actually.
Yeah, turn it up, Nick. Turn it up, mate.
Are you in 8K right now, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, right.
in about 21 minutes, I'm going to start frying the egg on the camera.
Yeah.
as Luke would help remind me of constantly.
Yeah. So can you see the share screen there?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah,
All good.
Definitely.
Yeah. So look, apologize for the size of some of these. I used to size my pictures at 1024, which is way too small now. But I think one of the strengths of photographing around Adelaide is the immediate accessibility to coastline. There's a ton of jetties around here and some interesting kind of rock formations around the place. And even though Port Willanga Jetty's been shot to death, it's just such a beautiful area that I can just keep revisiting it, even though it's been shot 1,000 times. And every time I've been, it's been slightly different conditions. And I took the shot way back in 2011. I don't think I've come across better conditions since. So it's west facing, like most of the Adelaide metropolitan coast. And this shot was taken at dawn when there was basically a storm going overhead, but clearing on the horizon back to the east. So there was a bit of a half rainbow going on, as well as the kind of perfect tide at high tide for it. So I took this shot with my 7D, and when you look at the file, you have to commiserate yourself with the noise at ISO 100. So I would like to go down there again at some time, but the reality of it is that back then Charlotte was not born yet, so I could head out any morning, but it's getting increasingly difficult to do local shoots, except for when I'm on holiday, because they're starting to get pile up kids activities and things like that for the weekend. So the very local shoots have been at a premium of late, whereas a lot of the local travel, because of COVID restrictions, have been more what I've been shooting around the state. So
do you find that's a location where it's become popular, and so that it's hard to have it to yourself, or is it you generally are the only photographer there?
The fortunate thing about SA locations is no matter how often they may seem shot, I very rarely encounter other photographers, especially at dawn. Like if I come to this location at sunset, there may be one or two other photographers there, but it's never like a lineup at all, and you're never having to fight for compositions or anything like that. So that's one of the joys of shooting around Adelaide, is that even compared to my brief periods of time, say in the Sydney coast when I was up there for a little bit, there were a lot of other people there trying to shoot in metropolitan areas, whereas you could have a pretty good morning of solitude to yourself on 9 out of 10 occasions when you're shooting around Adelaide.
Yeah, that's always a plus.
Yeah, it looks like it's great.
Find this one. Where's this one, Dylan?
It's Port Willanga.
Yeah, it's Port Willanga Jetty, which is kind of Port Willanga, which is about 40 minutes south of the CBD. Yeah, so it's pretty close, especially now with the highway that's built down to there. So all along the coast from just south of the city to basically stretching down to Cape Jarvis, I might just go to the map and explain some of the geography, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to start.
Can you see the map, or?
No, it hasn't popped up. You might have to put it either switch to that screen or I don't know if you've shared the whole screen, you can pull it onto the screen, or sometimes you just share the window of the actual program. So
you might have just shared the app, in which case
shared the window of the program rather than the entire screen.
Yeah.
Okay, I might just stop share for a bit.
Yeah, that's all right.
And share screen, just the whole screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right.
That's better, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so Adelaide CBD, I happen to live around just 4 kilometres south of the CBD, and Port Willanga is around about here. And you can see, it's a pretty special space from the colour of the water, even from Google Map shots. So in summer, if I go for a shoot, I'll often go for a dip afterward and things like that. So
nice.
Yeah, if you look at the coastline, basically all the way down the Fluoro coast, I haven't shot much at Selleck's Beach, but there are some very interesting cliffs that would be good from the air, and I've seen a lot of paragliders take some good shots around this area, so that's a common kind of paragliding spot. But more recently, Maiponga Beach, all of these are very kind of craggy coastlines, and recently heading down, my kind of new favorite local spot is probably Second Valley.
Oh, it's amazing down there. I've shot there once as well, and it was, yeah, I could definitely see myself going back there a few times.
Yeah, so you park there and you're just hit with all these cliffs all around you. And most of the time people take shots kind of heading over this way to the left of the jetty. But I decided on the last trip that during low tide, I'd try and wander off towards this way, towards all of this stuff.
Oh,
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't get that far because I just wanted to start taking photos essentially.
Wow.
So I'll just bring up a bit of we've got a bit outside of Adelaide, but
I've actually seen a really good Astro shot taken from that. You know, you wouldn't think it faced east so much, but it would be a really good spot for Astro, like east facing Astro photography.
Yeah. I think something keeps dying here. I'm not sure what's happening with my picture displaying app.
It's always the way.
That's Second Valley from one of the hills there, so you can imagine a Milky Way while I try and get it up. All right, I'll just close it and bring it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's bring it up again. So South Australia is pretty good for Astro, as you'd know, Luke, because there's not a lot of light pollution around. So
yeah.
Second Valley's, oh, okay, there we go. So yeah, from one of the hills up there, you can, at certain times of the year, get a full kind of Milky Way bow and so forth. So that's good for that. But I think, and this is the shot that you can get kind of, as we were talking, west of the jetty where most people go. But during the last trip, I kind of shot the reverse angle of Second Valley. And you've got all these kind of amazing rock formations there that just kind of make you feel as though you're walking on tilt because they're all kind of at 45 degrees and very sharp and so forth. So it's an amazing place. There's a lot of like tunnels going through as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for taking kind of cave shots or well-framed shots with rock and, you know, these kind of mountains in the background. So I could spend a lot of time down at Second Valley anytime now that I know that you can access that stretch of coastline at some point when the tide's right.
And you're quite a big fan of long exposures too, aren't you? I can see there the water's beautifully sort of smooth. Was it actually really calm, or did you use quite a long exposure there?
Yeah, at that for that particular shot and that morning, it was very still conditions. So almost to the point where, you know, normally I like with seascapes, I try and get, you know, like a 0.3, 0.5 shutter speed, some texture of the water to contrast with the surroundings and so forth. But it was almost dead still that morning. So I just thought, well, I'll try and get some contrast between texture of the rock and the sea and the sky in that shot, and just try and smooth out everything to contrast with the rock. Yeah. So that's what I was going for. The clouds ideally, not quite zooming in the right direction, but almost. And I like doing long exposures when the clouds are either zooming to me or away from me, rather than horizontal. But that can work sometimes as well. And yeah, I like doing long exposures after I've taken a few short exposures. So that's kind of what I do at the scene. I hunt out a composition, try and stick with it for the most part, take some shorter, maybe more dynamic type images, and then whack on an ND filter and take a more kind of surreal shot on top of it with the same composition. But on a morning like this, there wasn't really an opportunity for that kind of dynamic shot because there just wasn't enough water action going on.
It would have been a nice, calm, like very peaceful being there, though. So that would
have been pretty contrast to this shot. It's not one of my favorite shots or anything, but it's just a contrast that it can get pretty wild down there. And I was pretty lucky with this one because I was basically caught up on a rock shelf, and that wave kind of hit me at waist high with a very
I was going to say, I'm taking shots like that, and they're usually quite consequential.
Yeah, consequential for the camera. I was in head-to-toe Gore-Tex, and the camera was in a very sturdy waterproof, not waterproof, but a very good rain jacket. And I've got to give props to the Carter rain jacket because the camera did not get damaged. That shot anyway.
Nice.
What's the shutter speed on that one, Dylan?
I reckon it's probably like a 0.3.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it can get surging, and this jetty got quite damaged on that evening with some of the planks kind of surging up and breaking through.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess while I'm on this fluoro coast here, just down from Second Valley is Rapid Bay, and that's an area where Marianne likes going diving, and she's starting to get some proficiency in diving, and once she's a bit more comfortable, I think she's going to start trying to take underwater pictures. So that'll be a cool kind of branching out, encouraging her to do that. But you can see why with the clear kind of waters around there. And a lot of the diving's based underneath the old and the new jetty. And if just to the north here, there's some caves around here as well. I haven't had a chance to explore them yet, but it's a one-day thing.
Yep.
It's a one day I will do it thing, but I haven't got around to it.
Definitely going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I never thought about going down to Rapid Bay. Is it the jetty's photogenic there?
Yeah, I think I've got a shot of it.
Okay.
Let's have a look. Yep. So it's kind of cool because there's the old jetty and the new jetty. You can't actually access the old jetty anymore because there's a barricade, but there's some hills overlooking it, so you can. There's a hill higher than this one that I was on, but I hadn't been there before, so I hadn't scouted kind of a way up. But if you get on that higher hill, you can almost get a top-down look at the jetty, so almost a semi-aerial shot. And as you can see, long exposure here as well, because the seas weren't doing much, but kind of suited the scene, I thought.
Yeah.
Western Fall Milky Way for that one, Luke.
Yeah, it looked like it was facing more north.
Oh,
yeah, this one's facing north. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're like on the eastern side of it, you could have it going over the top of it.
Yeah. So so that the Milky Way shot was from here.
Sort of dawn and dusk, and not much in between. Is that?
Yeah, for me, unfortunately, that tends to be my shooting habits. Mainly at dawn locally, because that's when I can get out, and particularly in summer months, not so much the winter months, because in summer I can head out and shoot a sunrise at 6 o'clock at a location like this, and then head back when the kids are getting up, basically. So unfortunately, the local shoots tend to be a bit of a pressure cooker situation where sometimes there's amazing light coming well after dawn. I'm like, oh man, I have to be back, so I have to leave. So that's the unfortunate thing about some of these local shoots, because the other type of scenery that's really amazing around here is, particularly in winter, you've got all these green hills.
Yes, I think I've seen quite a few of those shots too. With how they sort of really abruptly end at the coastline with the cliffs above it, and they sort of like multicolored as well in terms of the rocks in the actual cliff.
Yeah, with certainly at the coast, but certainly as you're driving into Rapid Bay, you probably can't see it, but this is a pretty steep drop on the road down to here. So from anywhere along the road, you can just pull over and find a lone tree or some subject to shoot with those rolling hills in the background. And I'm sure that there's a wealth of shots to be shot there if you just waited there long enough after sunrise. But a lot of the times I've been driving home thinking, yep, that's a pretty good shot, but I'm on my way home. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
It's funny like that, isn't it? In a way, like you travel to all these amazing exotic locations around the world, and it turns out that you shoot your backyard even less than some of these other places that you travel to. It's interesting how it can happen that way sometimes.
Yeah, and look, along the way, Adelaide doesn't have a lot of waterfalls because we're pretty dry around here. But if there's one to kind of visit locally around the Fluoro Coast, it's probably Morialta Falls, which is this one here. It's just got really nice kind of jagged rocks around it. And above that, there's a second tier that I haven't figured out a way to photograph yet, because it basically ends in a deep pool that's just like a precipice. So you can't really set up anywhere in it. So it's a challenge. One day I'll try and get a good shot of the second tier.
Cool. Is Morialta Falls any good, or is that bit like the compositionally, it's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, look, I'll just bring you to. So this is not the website, but I have a like a scrapbook page on SmugMug where I kind of put all the pictures that I can link out if I need to. And so South Australia, I'm pretty sure I've got some Morialta shots in here somewhere. These are going back quite a long way, but Morialta is a very, I guess you call it, ephemeral waterfall, in that it really only flows for about 3 or 4 months a year, and then after that it's a real trickle. But there's a good series of falls there. The first falls is the one most people stop at, but I think the far more photogenic one's probably the second falls. So this is Morialta Falls from above. Wow. One of the treks, so it's pretty grand. This is probably one of the best flows I've seen it. Taken in around August, September, when a lot of the falls in Adelaide are at their peak. And
Adelaide Hills?
Yeah, and it's about 10 k's east of the CBD, basically.
Oh yeah, I actually walked around it. Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, it's a nice walk.
Yeah, beautiful. Actually, really surprising how close it is to the city. It's just wow.
Yeah.
That could be in the middle of the outback.
Yeah, exactly. It feels that way as well when you're up there. Except for the growing number of people that are going there because they've made the tracks a lot more friendly. That's some of the things that's happened to Waterfall Gully as well. But if you're a bit adventurous, you can head off to the second falls, which is above that, and I think far more photogenic. But it's very difficult to access because it's really overrun with blackberry bushes. So
doesn't sound
I think
like fun.
no. So one day I went in once again in the heavy duty Gore-Tex and just kind of tried to bully my way through the blackberry bushes. Wasn't a lot of fun, but I think it was good to see what these falls were like at their base. There's a third falls as well, but that also ends in a deep pool and probably not quite as photogenic as the others. But yeah, Morialta Falls all right. And if you get Waterfall Gully in full flow, sometimes you can get some interesting images as well. I don't think I've seen it flowing this much. I don't know if you've been there, Luke, at all. Or...
No, I don't think I've been there.
It's become the I guess the walking mecca of Adelaide. Everyone does their fitness routine up there now because they've made the path really good from Waterfall Gully up to Mount Lofty. But this waterfall's at its base and usually way smaller than that. And over these terraces, it's usually barely a trickle. So it's good to, like, this is in 2011. I haven't encountered it looking like this in recent years at all.
Right.
So that's around Adelaide. The other area of focus I showed you on Google Maps along the fluoro coast, they call it. So that's very interesting. But on the other side is a lot of amazing stuff. Like this is Deep Creek Conservation Park, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours out from Adelaide. And we're going to be spending a couple of nights there in December this year. And I guess December was chosen because the sun's probably going to hide these cliffs, which would otherwise be in shadow most of the time. And Blowhole Beach is a place that we've been to, and you can't really see it from the satellite pictures, but the rock formations here are really something else. Just a whole lot of waves and sheets and so forth. And I really want to see if I can get some shots from down there later this summer, just because I think it's probably pretty unique. I haven't really seen any shots from down those parts before. And again, all along this coast, it's very rugged, and you know, I've been seeing whether or not you can access some of these apparent looking, you know, access points. A lot of them have gates in front of them, so unfortunately, I haven't been able to. But one of my favorite shots or locations is around Newland Head, which is near Victor Harbour. So Waitpinga Beach is a surf beach, and between these two surf beaches, there's a really cool outcrop of rocks here. Once again, well suited for summer shooting because of its southerly aspect. And I'll just see if I can find that for you. Yeah, Newland Head, here we go.
Oh, stunning.
Yeah, so I think that one was the OzGeo guys put on the cover of the calendar that they did last year.
Awesome.
And I have that one in print, so it's it's a good one to have.
Yeah.
I very rarely print my stuff, but that one is a nice one to have.
So that one would be like a, 30-second foreground sort of thing?
I think this is a single exposure, so
Okay.
it's probably a couple of minutes
Okay.
from memory. It was like obviously you can't tell, but it was a 40-degree morning. We were having a massive heat wave at the time. And I did notice at that time that my A7R was given a lot of hotspots during that time. I suspect it was something to do with the ambient temperature and the long exposure. But certainly I want to try and head down to those parts more, particularly in the summer months. I mean, if you look at all of this stuff down here, there's got to be some kind of unexplored good shots down there that no one's really looked at, even opposite King's Head, which is just near Victor Harbour.
Is that Petrel Cove area? Or something?
Yeah. I'll show you that next.
Yeah.
So this is Victor Harbour, which is a good holiday location, and Petrel Cove's just around here.
Okay.
So once again, very rugged. And the good thing about Petrel Cove is you can shoot from either side. So in the summer months, if you want a direct sun shot, you'd probably stand on this side looking out here at dawn. But you can get some nice reverse light in winter as well. So it's kind of an all seasons type of location. And a couple of shots I've got from there. There's a West Island at the edge there. I think Peter Eastway's got a shot of that.
Okay.
And when he visited during his workshop. But this is one of the more famous kind of formations that people shoot. And this is the kind of shot where I'd be going for, 0.5, 0.3 second exposure and try to do it in a single frame where possible. And Paul, I think this is where I'm looking forward to potentially the freedom of a camera like the R5 if the IBIS is truly 5 stops, because then I wouldn't need to worry about setting up a tripod and so forth to take this kind of shot.
Well, so 8 stops with the right lens, Dylan.
Yeah, that's what I heard, and 1 to 2 seconds even. But I'm just be happy with 0.3 to 0.5 because that's where I'm taking a lot of seascape type of images.
It would certainly increase your productivity a heck of a lot for shots.
Yeah, definitely. So that
going to get 10 long exposures in 5 minutes.
We had Will on last week, and he shoots basically exclusively handheld, and the quality of the shots he was even getting with the water flow just from handheld was pretty amazing. So
yeah,
definitely achievable.
Yep. And as I said, I would much prefer to be able to do mainly handheld shots because I do like to kind of explore and get into weird positions when taking shots and so forth. But I guess one of the advantages using a tripod is for my style of shooting is that if I then want to take a long exposure with the same kind of composition, it's clearly easier to do it with a tripod and having taken the more dynamic shots with exactly the same kind of elements in the picture in the same position. So that's Petrel Cove from that side, and just looking from the other way at the sunset as well. So there's just so much to offer at Petrel Cove. It's another one of those spots where, despite being there lots of times, you can just keep shooting and getting different compositions each time.
That's Granite Island in the distance, or is that something?
No, that's West Island. So
okay.
if we look at
the other way, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it's this island over here. Granite Island is on the other side of the bluff,
right?
Which I haven't actually got any good pictures of because the topography isn't quite as dramatic. So that's Granite Island over there, but
yeah.
Encounter Bay is with Wright Island here is actually a good spot to take some serene shots because it's quite sheltered. So there's never any kind of rip roaring kind of wave action there. So I often go there when I just want to chill out a bit and not have an adrenaline rush or anything like that. So this is an example of a shot from that particular position. So if I'm going there, I'm usually taking shots in the water. So got a trusty pair of waders that have lasted me for 5 years so far that I don't go without.
Are they like chest waders? Are they got pretty high, or are they just sort of more just to the waist?
I've got the one I've got is chest high waders, and they've got neoprene boots. And even though the neoprene has some leaks in it, Even if water gets in, it still keeps me warm. So it doesn't bother me if I'm wet in the feet, as long as the rest of me is not wet, because I tend to get cold very easily, unfortunately.
Well, it's definitely one thing that I want to invest in is waders, and just opens up a lot more possibilities.
Mate,
Yeah.
cash converters. That's where I got mine.
One. I think I look a little bit odd when I'm wearing waders, because I often wear like oversized, what do you call them, tivas over the neoprene. So maybe like size 14 tivas over the neoprene boots.
I like like Crocs or the sandals.
Yeah, like hard based ones.
Yeah.
And then if it's slippery, like if it's in a forest or a mossy environment, and then over the tivas, I put some mini spikes as well.
Now there's
I'd love to see that.
The next thing I have to put is wear a duckbill, and then it'd be the full outfit. Yeah.
I reckon Paulie could make a good portrait out of that.
Away, mate. You spend a lot of time in the tripod in the water. What do you use that handles that sort of abuse?
Well, they don't handle it too well, unfortunately. I've gone through quite a few different tripods over the years, and one thing I found is that I've had a Jitso waterproof one, and I've had a Sururi waterproof one as well. And despite the claims to be waterproof, I can't remember which series it was. I think it was the Jitso Safari series. The water still got in, and so did the salt. And the difference between the normal type of tripod and the waterproof ones is that the normal ones are much easier to clean. So you can take them apart much easier, rinse off all the salt and so forth, and just leave them dismantled. Whereas I found with the waterproof ones, because they're actually making an effort to stop water going in, it was just much more finicky to take apart. And so stuff got trapped in there easier. That was my experience. I haven't had a waterproof tripod for about 5 years as a result. There may be better ones out there now, but I just go with a regular tripod. I've got a Surui at the moment. I can't remember which series, actually. If I can find it, I'll tell you. But yeah, that's the Surui I've got is a regular tripod, and it probably has lasted me 2.5 years with constant immersion, quite often in salt water. But as long as I get home and put it in a bath of fresh water, it's done all right so far.
Nice.
Cool. Certainly an interesting looking area around Victor Harbour.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you actually drive out to Granite Island, or is it like just a walking path?
Yeah, it's a causeway, and there's a horse-drawn carriage that you can take out there, or you could just walk out there.
Yeah, it's one of the major attractions to Victor, isn't it? That horse-drawn carriage and going out to Granite Island and seeing the penguins and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, the penguin colony is being ravaged by some local foxes at the moment, so that's they're having to attend to that. Unfortunately, that sad state of affairs.
Do they walk across the causeway to get there?
I'm not sure how they got there, but there are a few that are apparently decimating the penguin colonies up there. But look, even around from Victor Harbour, we often do family holidays around Port Elliot, and there's some really nice kind of rock pillars even around Port Elliot, around this point here near the caravan park.
Okay.
And I've only had the opportunity to shoot there a couple of times, but yeah, some really bizarre kind of rock formations out there that I hadn't seen photographs. So during the family holidays, we took an opportunity just to explore a bit around there.
That's quite granity then around there.
Yeah, so very smooth granite boulders, and quite treacherous when wet. So it's not somewhere you really want to be heading out when it's very wet, because the seas can get quite big there.
Yeah, granite's got that interesting property, doesn't it? When it's dry, it's very grippy, and it's quite opposite.
Yeah, well, I had a scary moment on Mount Amos last year. When I went up in clear skies, then all of a sudden this cloud band came through and dumped rain. I was like, okay,
Oh, that's
I don't know what to do. So,
Slipperiest rock in the world when you get rain on that granite.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. So I had my spikes on me, which was lucky because that gave me some purchase. But
oh yeah.
the granite around these parts is kind of like the Mount Amos type of rock in terms of its slipperiness.
As soon as you said that, I had Mount Amos and a
Yeah,
million.
me too.
Yeah. Like the main pastime for Freycinet rangers is dealing with busted ankles coming down Mount Amos.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yep. Quite a few helicopter rescues off there too, actually.
Yeah. Luckily, no mountains made of granite that big around South Australia. The other interesting spot I thought I mentioned very briefly was Malang.
Okay.
Malang's jetty faces southeast, which is good for Milky Way rise at certain times of the year. So I've been fortunate enough to head down there and take some shots of it down there. There's not a heap else down there apart from those jetties, but if you're after dark skies and Milky Way rise over a jetty,
Cool.
it's pretty good to do down there.
Oh, awesome. It's not like one of those newly recreated jetties or anything. It's got a bit of character to it.
Yeah, this one, unfortunately, I don't know whether it's on every night, but some nights it hasn't been on, but there's this really annoying street light that's lit up all of this so brightly. So this wasn't artificially lit by me. It was just a street light. So I had to blend a couple of exposures just to not have it completely blown out. But there are some other small jetties there that face in that same aspect. And an interesting series of shacks that someone popped out at midnight and started having a chat to me while I was doing this. So a good experience. Talking about the land leases, very interesting, but yeah.
But Dylan, with a photograph like that, you're hinting at your workflow a little bit in terms of deliberately choosing different exposures and blending them together. Could you walk us through how you'd approach a shot like this?
Yeah, so I guess the first step with planning a shot like that is probably the go-to app would be Photo Pills to check the direction of the Milky Way, and also to make sure there's no kind of ambient, a 3/4 moon or anything like that going on. And after that, it's a question of getting down there. And what I would do for a shot like this, where is it? Is that nowadays, I tend to take a whole series of shots, maybe about 20 or 30 with the same composition, and blend a foreground image with using the average method to kind of stack them and then reduce the noise through that way. And then do a separate one for the sky using a program called Sequator. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that at all?
I've played with that a little bit actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it does a reasonable job of lining up the stars and reducing the noise, but it's a bit hit and miss. Like sometimes it'll create star trails and so forth. So I do try to use that for the noise reduction in the sky. But for the foreground, it's just a simple case of stacking them up in Photoshop and then putting each layer sequentially, less opacity. So the second layer 50%, then 33%, then 25%, 20%, etc. So that's my workflow for the star shots. But for this particular one, I think all I had to do for this foreground instead of stacking was just lower the ISO. So that it was simple as that. I didn't really need to stack too many for that shot, just because of how bright that annoying street light was.
Awesome. It might be a good one, a case for using like a light pollution filter as well, just to cut through that.
I guess the issue about I do like the night filter and the NISI night filter, but the only problem with that I find is that my 16 to 35, I've only got the f4. So I can't
lose it more.
Yeah, so I can't afford to be losing more stops of light unless I'm really, really pushing the ISO. I suppose I could just stack heaps of images and that'll work, but I haven't been game to shoot above 6400 and try and get a clean image. One day I should try though, I think.
What was your ceiling on the 5D4? Is it 6400?
Yeah, on the 5D Mark IV, I prefer 3200 if possible. But 6400, if I stack, is probably okay as well. And pretty similar for the A7R2. I didn't actually.
That's the one thing I haven't tested out with the R5 is Astro stuff. I think I've taken 7,000 frames in a week. Aerials, snow, and long exposures and portraits, but I haven't tried the nighttime stuff yet, and to really push the ISOs and see if it really sings in that regard.
Yeah. I find the Mark IV is what I'm using most of the time these days for taking more action shots that are handheld. So I presume that if I eventually get the R5, I'm thinking I'm probably going to try and take more of those dynamic shots, possibly intermediate exposure with those. And the A7R2's image quality, I still really like. And I've kind of gotten used to its color science aspect of it. So I make kind of appropriate changes and so forth. But I really like the A7R2 as a camera, and I haven't had a problem with it for years after a rough beginning, where we went on a Tassie trip with Luke, and on the first morning we were about to go, it just started malfunctioning.
Yeah, that wasn't fun. I think that was to do with the adapter more so.
Yeah, it was. It was a better bones. Yeah.
But that's they did change the color science a lot with the later camera releases. So that's one of the major improvements that they made.
All right.
So do you spend a lot of time planning, I guess, because if you've got these targeted windows of time, I guess you kind of need to really.
Yeah, for the local shoots, not so much, because quite often I'll just want to go for a drive anyway. So like if I had a really tiring or bad week at work, I was like, well, Saturday morning I'm just going to head out and visit somewhere, and if there happens to be a photographic opportunity, that's all good. So the planning for the local stuff, not so much, but when we do our dedicated trips, I've only got windows basically at around the sunrise in particular, and sometimes sunset if the family wants to go out and so forth. So that's when I'll kind of get heavy into planning with apps and keeping an eye on cloud apps like Skippy Sky and Cloud Free Night and so forth. So those are probably the two apps that I look at for weather. And then Photo Pills being the one I look at for direction of sun, moon, Milky Way, etc. And then Google Maps to see what the interesting landscapes from above look like, and see if they translate into images from the ground.
Awesome.
So I've kind of unwittingly ventured over to Kangaroo Island. We could talk about Kangaroo Island.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's sort of a continuation of the peninsula there, really. Is it at the end of it's where you get the ferry, isn't it? Cape Jarvis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yep. So at the end of the Fluoro Coast is Cape Jarvis, and
how much is the ferry now? It was pretty expensive when I did it about 3 or 4 years ago, but
it still is. It still is. Like for a one-way trip for a normal car, it's still about $140.
Wow, that is expensive.
I assume the locals get a better deal than that.
I would hope so, yeah, because I presume quite a lot of them kind of commute to and fro, but it is pretty pricey. But look, try to make the most of the time while you're there, and I certainly don't do kind of in and out trips.
Was that 2 years ago, Dylan? Or?
Was that, sorry?
I know
the fire was at the start of this year, end of last year.
Oh, that recent.
Yeah. So unfortunately, all of this here, up to about Pandana, was largely affected. So our recent trip was about a month ago, and you could see fire damage along the roads, even near Kingscote and stuff, and even around Seal Bay and so forth. But everything like to the west of here was just so kind of severely affected. But I think the good thing about it is that there's a lot of regrowth, and it doesn't look as though.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, and a lot of property looks to have survived as well. So they obviously a lot of good strategies went in at the time of the fires, or maybe a lot of the fires followed the roads where a lot of the trees are, because that's what we could see a lot. Like the pastures were okay, but the roadside trees and things were all burnt down.
It's a lot of wildlife in there. That's pretty devastating to think about, all of that. A lot of koalas.
Yeah, they reckon the koala populations dropped from 30,000 to 5,000. At least that's what the people at the KI. I should plug these guys. KI Wildlife Park. That's a very good park to go to, and the kids love it.
I really enjoy it too.
Yeah. So they gave us a bit of a perspective on what's happened with wildlife numbers during the fires. But yeah, all of this looking like regrowth, and I'll just bring up. So Marianne took this shot just outside of Flinders Chase. So it's just miles and miles of this blackened stuff, but lots of green coming up from a month ago. So fairly confident that it'll regrow, because there have been very big fires there in Flinders Chase in particular in the past, and it's always come back. So fingers crossed it'll come back from this one as well.
Have they had a bit of rain over winter as well? You know,
It's been a fairly moderate kind of season.
Okay.
Not like the year started off reasonably wet, but then it got dry again, and so we're back to being a below average year.
Yep.
It was above average for the first few months, but now it's back to being below.
So maybe the south and west got affected?
Yeah, the south and west is where it started, and it went all the way to a third to a half of the island.
Wow.
So yeah, so if you imagine all of this here, that's kind of fire affected areas. So even the stuff I was shooting on the north coast, you're driving through kind of burnt areas and so forth.
It's where a lot of the good stuff is.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, in terms of shooting Kangaroo Island, the major tip I guess I could give is that the north coast is really good for winter shooting, I think. Just because of the direction of light again. And we're visiting the south coast with extended family to Vivon Bay in December this year. So hopefully I get to explore some of the south coast. But did you want to take a look at some of the north coast stuff? Or
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So we tried to stay at this place, Cape Cassini Wilderness Retreat, because I just found it there while looking at these cliffs, and it just looks like an amazing area to photograph. But they were not open following COVID. So sad thing, a lot of businesses around Kingscote appear to have closed down, including our favourite pizzeria.
Oh no.
But yeah, Bell Pizzeria was awesome. David Mitchell was the guy. And unfortunately that was shut when we were there. We were devastated, but I have to talk to David one day to see what happened.
Yeah.
So look, I'll take you to where I did actually shoot. And that is Western River.
Okay.
So this is just an amazing spot. And one of the highlights about it is the drive down. So you're just descending through hills. It almost looks like what you would drive through at Rapid Bay or Second Valley as you get there.
Okay.
But yeah, here we go. So this is probably a shot of the hills driving down.
Yeah.
So very nice kind of green rolling hills. And once again, we could have just stopped at multiple places to take this kind of shot. This was just kind of pulled out from the car window as we were down heading towards the beach. But we got there way too late. The story behind this shot, and probably if you want to visit Flinders Chase, you should probably take note, is that we went to photograph remarkable rocks at sunset, and at the moment Flinders Chase is closed off. You can't enter any later than 3, and you have to exit by 5. So we got there at about 3:30, hoping to hang around and see the animals pop up after dusk and so forth. But we weren't able to do that, so we detoured across the island to get to this spot on the way back to Kingscote. And it's a very good kind of plan B, so to speak, because it's a pretty wild area. And I didn't get too great a shots down here, but once you head down there, it's this particular cove there that's very ragged with a lot of kind of cool foreground rocks there. And
Yeah,
I'll just see.
Waterway is quite nice too.
What's that, sorry?
Waterway can be quite nice as well.
Yeah. I'll just see if I've got a shot that I'm not particularly happy with, but just to give you a demonstration of the kind of stuff, the geology that's there. Yeah, so this is the kind of stuff you can shoot down from the base of Western Island. So just lots of parallel looking rock facing out towards a winter sunset. So a good spot for winter.
Nice.
I'll get rid of that. So that's one spot that was quite good to get to. The other spot that I really can't speak highly enough of is King George Beach. So there's actually nothing around there. There's these private rental places out here, but the public road takes you down to here. And you can see, like, from all even the topography, it's some pretty wild looking places around here. And there's a really cool sea arch around on this side as well. So, you know, it's if you have the time, you can, it's not too sketchy to hike over these hills to get to these coves, because you certainly can't do it walking around here, because there's no beach to walk on for sections of it at all. So they might be in low tide, but I didn't see what it was like. But yeah, certainly if you base yourself at King George, you've got lots of exploration to do. And one day, who knows, I might just kind of car camp it if I'm allowed on a solo trip around Kangaroo Island. But that's certainly a prime location. I just want to hang around and explore for a bit and see how far I can walk along these hills and coves and discover some stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of the images from there, so that's straight off from where you park at the start.
It's an amazing coastline, yeah.
Yeah, and you can, on the first night that I was shooting here, I just saw this arch in the distance, and I thought, well, I've got to try and visit it later on. And yeah, this is the arch from close up. It's actually quite hard to shoot because you have to, basically there's just open sea directly behind you, and you've got to be watching your back at all times, and you really can't set up much else of a composition apart from this. So on that particular evening, I kind of abandoned trying to get more shots of this particular area, and instead went to shoot a double rainbow that was happening behind.
Nice.
Yeah, so the parking is a couple of coves over, so I just kind of explored as far as I could before the light started to get too low, and then came back to this spot after seeing it on the way to that arch.
And it looks like there's a bit of lichen on the rocks, as well as you've got obviously that beautiful sunset glow as well. But
yeah, definitely. Not so much in this shot, but you might be able to see it. Yeah, more in this shot here. So there's a lot of very red, kind of like Bay of Fires type of red lichen, but just on solid granite rock. So the whole geology is really kind of very rugged out there. Quite treacherous. I've got a few cuts in my hands from clambering on those rocks because they're pretty sharp. But yeah, it's certainly a lot of fun to explore if you're up for it. And this was during very, very plain seas. You can see out here, there's not a white cap in sight. So you can still get this kind of dynamic water motion even in plain sea. So I'd imagine, like, if you came here during actual wild weather, you could get some pretty amazing shots even from far off of crashing waves and things like that.
cool.
Well, do you have CPLs on when you're shooting these sort of scenes?
For this type of scene, I usually say take the CPL off when there's a rainbow about, because sometimes you might accidentally polarize it out. But for this particular shot, the camera was all set up with the filters and so forth. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Nissi filter, but the CPL's on the inside. So it's more tricky to kind of take the CPL out separately if you've got some filters stacked up on top already. So for this type of shot, I just made sure that the CPL was in the orientation to enhance the rainbow and not polarize it out. And the other filter used for this scene was a 3-stop medium, which is probably what I would try and use for most of the shots facing away from the sun.
Great.
And I do try to get most of the images in a single shot.
Do you have a favorite, Grad? Would the 3-stop medium be your favorite, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. That's my kind of starting point. Unless I'm shooting kind of at a flat horizon into the sun, then I'm using hards or reverses and so forth.
Okay.
But generally speaking, this type of scene would probably be a one that's set up right for a medium. Yeah.
A medium is a type of soft, Grad?
Yeah, it's kind of in between. It's got a more gradual transition than a hard, basically.
Yeah, I think I've heard people refer to it being more similar to Lee's soft grads. Like Nissi's softs are actually quite soft, and so I
think so. Yeah, having used it too, you're right. It's probably just a tiny bit more graduated than a Lee soft, is how you think about it.
Yes.
And so for this type of shot, again, you know, the EOS R5 handheld, wouldn't have to set up a tripod. So that's I think for me, strangely enough, that's its selling point to me. It's not the other stuff. It's really the IBIS and how well that performs.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
So you're still using filters a lot. You know, you're not blending stuff as you're still using the grads, and you know what I mean.
Yeah. I prefer to do that. I think look, I take a lot of what I call insurance shots. Like even when I've got the grad on, I'll take you know, 3 exposures anyway.
Yep.
But if I can get away with just the one that's appropriately exposed, that's definitely my preference.
Yeah.
And there's no you know, specific reason to do that. It's just that with photography, I see it in terms of a challenge to research the spot, and then a sense of fulfillment when you've actually found a spot and it's pulled off, particularly when it's somewhere that's never been shot before. Secondly, just the physical challenge of getting to certain places as well. So that's largely a lot of the reason why I began doing landscape photography, was because of the challenge of hiking there and then taking pictures of the wilderness. So, and lastly, I think for me, it's one of the challenges of photography is to see if I can get a shot in frame, like in a single frame. And that's a challenge that I like to give myself. And I certainly don't expect other people to have that challenge, but it's for me, it gives me great satisfaction when I can look at that LCD and say, look, I don't have to do too much to that shot.
Yeah.
But clearly there's situations where, you know, I may have something more, I guess, artistic in mind, where I'll take a certain set of shots in order to do that. And I guess with Milky Way shots, you're doing that a lot. I'm doing that a lot. But yeah, certainly this type of shot where it's pretty much a single frame is the kind of goal for me whenever I'm heading out to do this kind of thing.
If you're going to look at doing handheld, would you, I mean, I guess you, like if you were to shoot that scene in handheld, I guess first of all, with the newer camera, you probably have better dynamic range, so you could probably get it without filters anyway and recover the detail. But also you could maybe do an exposure bracket as well, as to also have a darker frame for the sky, perhaps. Yeah,
definitely. One thing I found that I don't know if it's a good thing to do or not, but when I'm shooting waterscapes, I find it annoying trying to blend exposures, because, you know, it'll look completely different between a 1/10 versus a 1/5 versus a 1/2 second water motion. So sometimes I do like ISO bracketing, but I suppose if you've got to maintain the same shutter speed so that the water motion looks at least consistent between the frames. But I suppose if you've got a truly kind of ISO, what do you call it? ISO
invariant,
ISO invariant camera, then you don't necessarily need to do that. But for seascapes, I often do a strange variation of bracketing with ISO.
Okay. What do you mean ISO invariant?
So in other words, if you take a properly exposed shot at 6400, if it's a truly ISO invariant camera, then the noise on that should look like if you took a shot at ISO 100 and bumped it up X number of stops.
Yeah, so you could actually expose at lower ISOs. Some people say you can shoot Milky Way shots at ISO 800 and then just pull up the exposure slider and potentially get better results doing that, because you can recover any highlights that would have blown out otherwise. So something that I should have played more with myself, but I need to look into that more. I still shoot at high ISOs when I do my Milky Way work.
Yeah, same with here as well. I just haven't I haven't been game to do it, actually.
Yeah, I need to do some tests and get confidence, I think, if it was going to happen that way. Something to me says if you're going to recover that much shadow detail, there's got to be some pretty horrendous noise. But
yeah, I think so. Certainly on the Mark IV, I don't think that's an ISO invariant camera. So the noise is pretty good, but it's not as good even as a Sony A7R II.
Dylan, you're obviously very competent in your post-production. Where did you sort of learn those sort of skills?
Yeah, that's probably an interesting story. Luke mentioned that I first started off in Flickr, And the Flickr community was really awesome back in the pre-2010 kind of era. People were very willing to help, and I started following people like Ryan Dyer and a few of his colleagues from the Pacific Northwest. And quite a lot of the time, if I had a question about how someone achieved a certain look to their image, I could get an answer from someone on Flickr. They'll be willing to help out. And on top of that, I basically did a lot of YouTube videoing for very basic things, and then tried to apply it to the images I was taking. I unfortunately did go through the Photomatics era.
I think everyone goes through a HDR phase, don't
Yeah,
they?
the HDR phase with Photomatics. But very quickly, I found that the results were quite there. But I did find that even using Photomatics, I started blending in shots from the actual image and not the Photomatics generated image, and that made things look more natural. And then gradually from that, I learned ways using luminosity masks in particular to blend images in terms of using just the raw images and not having a third-party program do it for you at all. But I think one of the biggest steps in my learning curve was around the, I guess, 2012-13 period. The Pacific Northwest group had this kind of group called Area 51. I'm not sure if you guys heard of that at all, but there were 51 members, and I happened to be one of those people. And in that group, we would put up pictures and we would process versions of it, and it was free for all kind of critique from everyone in the group about how they would do things. People would let other people edit pictures with their raws and so forth and come up with their version. And so I learned a lot of things about different techniques for editing in that particular group.
And they're the sort of people too in that group that you'd actually seriously take their feedback to, because they were all exceptional photographers, weren't they?
Yeah. So for the Aussie photographers in there, for people like Dylan Gelkin, Kakit Jung, I can't remember who else was in there, but the American photographers, Ryan Dyer, wasn't it? David Thompson, Peter Koskun. So a lot of very talented photographers. Ted Gore was in it as well, Aaron Babnick. So they all had a wealth of knowledge about Photoshop and so forth to share. And so I learned a lot from that period about how to edit images, and more importantly, the techniques that were out there. Because after a while, I think if you're in a group like that, once you've gotten comfortable with the techniques, I think the reason why certain people started to leave it was that whenever you put an image in, the style that it gravitated towards was always kind of similar. And in the end, I felt that, I wanted to leave my pictures a bit more kind of mid-tone contrasty and a bit more vibrant, because that's what the look I'm always aiming for. Whereas the constant advice from that group was more a kind of muted, refined type of look. And I really love that kind of look, but it's not necessarily what I want to produce with the images that I have.
Yeah, you've got to stick to your own style or what you feel's right at the end of the day. Yeah. And
I think over the years, I've gotten more comfortable with the fact that certain people might not like the contrast pushed or the colors so deep and so forth, but in the end, it's kind of what I find pleasing and what gives me the most pleasure out of heading out there and taking these shots and producing them.
Absolutely. Cool. And one other location on KI I've always admired is that Kingscote Jetty.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
So lots of different opportunities. Probably, I'll show you where it is on the map. Oops.
I think it's probably one of the best old jetties in Australia to photograph. It has to be.
Yeah, definitely. It's tucked away, but it's very accessible. So if
and
you
it faces sunset, is it?
Sunrise.
Oh, sunrise. Okay.
Yeah. So if you stay at Kingscote, this is the main township, and then just on this is a hill here that's about 30 meters high, and that's the old jetty down there.
All right.
So it kind of faces. Yeah, hard to pick there, but you can see it from town, and there's a path actually going down the hills there. So
okay,
it was quite amusing because I didn't know about that path, and the first time I visited was in dawn, and I thought, how on earth do these people get down to this jetty? And so I kind of did a bum slide down there in the dark, and then found out there was a path as I was heading off in the morning. Oh, sorry, that's not it here. That's this one over here. Yeah, but you can't really see it on Google Maps. But I'll just show you that's what it's like at dawn. So it can light up directly. And I guess this shot's one that I took in 2016, and it's probably the largest print that I produced for someone.
Okay.
So someone from the UK wanted it at 1.6 meters, and I was a bit nervous because I'd never produced anything that big, but and he wanted it produced from his printer, so we had to go by you know, testing it on the local printer here, which we use black and white. Got the colors right, and then just took a leap of faith and got it printed over on their printer over there. And fortunately, customer was pleased with the product. So
it doesn't look like it's going to, you know, it doesn't have too much time left in it by the width of those poles or the posts there.
Yeah, I think the thing about it that really caught me was this wonky one here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how it's ended up like that. But this one, you have to wade in probably about 5-10 meters. So it's usually pretty calm during that period of time. But it's also, this is a shot I took on the more recent, the recent trip about a month ago. And it lines up quite well with Milky Way rise at certain times of the year. And this beam of light here was just complete luck. It's from Cape Jarvis. So the lighthouse from Cape Jarvis across the way, for some reason, it just flashed the once and never again. I don't know what was going on at the time, but just pure luck. And
sort of coming just from the right part of the photograph, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was not intentional, but lining up the Milky Way was certainly something that I did a bit of planning, given that we were going to visit at that time of year.
Yeah. And that must be the light pollution of Adelaide in the distance there.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. So once again, it would be a shot that would potentially benefit from using a night filter. But until I get a better Astro lens, a faster Astro lens, I probably don't have the luxury of doing it. So there's heaps else, lots of other stuff on Kangaroo Island.
Yeah, I've always loved your remarkable rocks shots too. Yeah,
so
that's the complete opposite end of the island, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the far southwest. And if you look at the way Remarkable Rocks is structured, it's this huge slippery granite tor that just sticks out. So you've got all these rocks in the middle. So you can shoot at any time of the year, basically, with any kind of light condition. As long as you find a half decent composition, you should be able to make use of any available light.
Last time I went there, there was a full Bollywood film production going on right in the middle.
Oh, right.
Like joking, there's dudes in white suits and wispy moustaches and catering trucks everywhere and big booms, and I was just like, "What the hell's going on?"
Did you ever catch what the movie was?
The guy kept telling me he was the most famous actor in India or something.
Brett Lee.
Like, yeah, man, just pass it, buddy.
Did you find out at all if those access restrictions to Flinders Chase are is there a time limit on that, or is it sort of a? Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'll have to ring up because we are visiting that area in December, and I'm hoping that the restrictions will be off then, because I'd imagine they'd be later anyway, because 5 o'clock would be extremely restrictive around summertime.
Yeah. But it sort of rules out any sunrise or sunset.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I thought about doing a huge mission, because you can still visit Hanson Bay, and you can basically do the KI walk all the way to Remarkable Rocks. But it's a bit of a mission to get out there, and I don't know how much of that path is still viable anyway. But yeah, it is about 20 k's from there, so you'd have to start pretty early.
It's a decent walk.
Yeah. But there's lots along the south coast that I would want to visit. I tried to do some of it during the last trip. You can see Vivon Bay. It's probably one of the best beaches in South Australia, if not Australia. Just the colours and the sand, and and next to it, near Seal Bay, is something that I don't know a lot of people visit it, but Bales Beach is amazing. Like this beach is like Vivon Bay, but probably even better, I would have thought. And so the water and the sands and so forth. The reason why I visited Bales Beach was you may have heard of Little Sahara.
Yep.
So that Little Sahara is this complex of dunes here, which don't look like much on the satellite, but they still look pretty impressive in real life. So that's a picture from the furthest dune that's not so trashed by the operations that have been set up there. But if you kept Little Sahara's image in mind on the satellite, what I was hoping to do was to see these ones here, which look, absolutely enormous. So, but the truth was that, I had walked for a fair way to here and started heading inland here, and even this stuff here is pretty scrubby and hard to get through. So it'd be a real mission to get through to there if you have to go through all of this stuff, I'd imagine. So one day, again, probably something for a solo trip. I'm pretty confident you wouldn't get lost because these hills are pretty elevated, so you can always see the ocean.
Yeah, and they'd also be very untouched as well, in the sense of, wouldn't have other people's footprints all through it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Always out there, don't they, Dylan? Like, and even all-wheel driving sort of bikes and sand surfing tours. So I'm not sure where in the dunes that they run those. But
yeah, so the all of those, a lot of them are based at Little Sahara now. So a lot of the quad biking and things like that, you can't really see it at all. But that first dune, I remember being able to take some reasonable pictures of it back in 2008 and 12 when I've been before. But now it's just completely filled with signs of human activity, basically, since that operations have started there. So it's unfortunate, but still, I guess there's parts of it that are relatively pristine. And photographing dunes is quite an interesting thing to do because I've been there a couple of times now, so I tend to just go up in the one spot that I know I'm not going to photograph, and then walk around, taking a wide detour around the spots to leave them kind of as untouched as possible. Otherwise, you just get massive footprints in your pictures.
I love shooting dunes. It's one of my favorite subjects. Not too many in Tassie though, unfortunately. But
yeah, the big one at Crescent Bay.
Oh, there are.
They're
not they're
not very accessible.
Maybe, yeah, I guess there's some decent ones.
Yeah, the Hindi dunes.
during the last trip,
on another level.
Yeah, I thought about going to the Tarkine instead of Frenchman's Cap last trip.
Oh yeah,
because I saw some dunes on the satellite pictures, but in the end, I thought maybe not go so far off track. But anyway, we got lucky here because there was some kangaroo footprints here, but I didn't see the actual roos. But I'd imagine it would have been an epic shot if a kangaroo was bounding through this picture.
Yeah.
And Bales Beach, this is just got lucky with a fairly cool looking cloud in the background there during the last trip. But once again, just to plug Paul's camera, no tripod would be awesome for that shot.
I'd way prefer to do that by hand than with a tripod.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of cleaning went into the tripod after this.
It looks like it could be a sandy bottom because, I mean, to me, when you're doing long exposures on sand, the tripod moves. So how do you
Yeah, the issue about doing that is risking tripod damage. So basically, when I'm setting up in soft sand, I let a few wave passes go through, and then the tripod legs basically get buried and wedged into the sand. So
they've sunk enough where you think they're not going to move.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and even then, with the moving wave, all it takes is a rock hitting it on the way out, and then your exposure's blurred and things like that. So for this type of shot, definitely advantage to not to have to use a tripod.
Yes, you need a tripod sponsor, Dylan.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, he might not if he goes handheld in the future.
Yeah, that's right. Canon sponsor. Yeah, and one day, look, south of Bales Beach, you've got all this remarkable coastline here that just is, I guess, begging for exploration. But
Wow. It's like a really nice place for aerial photography as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So during the summer trip, I might try and head down and, leave the car parked here and early hours of the morning and see how much I can walk along here and see what I can see of the cliff tops for a future kind of visit.
Have you done Astro at Remarkable Rocks?
Yeah. And once again, it's
great location for it.
It's a really good spot because you can set up any direction.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I tried to do a few here, but unfortunately cloud came in and rain came in with this particular shot. But yeah, it's it would be an amazing spot for astrophotography at any time of the year, I would have thought.
Yeah. I got the Southern Cross nicely in that one.
Yeah.
Is that with a candle?
That's with I don't know what it's electric candle. So yeah, so just a handheld one. I've kind of steered away from taking these shots because they've been shot. That shot's been done a lot now, and I'm not that comfortable with having myself in a landscape shot these days. But that's just a personal preference these days.
It's a beautiful light though. That really suits that texture in the rock.
Yeah. Really. That light, you can rotate the colors. So orange was a good choice for the orange rock there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just out of interest, that rock is, I think it's called the Miss Piggy rock.
Yeah. Yeah, pig snout. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right.
Do you feel like there's a particular time of year, if you're going to choose to go there one time, that you would favor over another time, or?
I'll just bring it back up. Basically, a general rule of thumb for Kangaroo Island would be North Coast winter and South Coast summer. But if you're going to shoot Remarkable Rocks in particular, that's at any time of the year job, because I've been there in summer and winter, and the light you get just is in different directions. So you can compose to suit whatever you choose, essentially. In the summer months, it's out to sea, but I think any time. Admirals Arch is one thing that's shot a lot, and it's the actual archway faces kind of directly west. So if you wanted to get a shot with the sun coming straight through it, you'd be looking at either side of the equinox month. So March, September would be kind of best for that type of shot through there if you want direct light coming through it. Winter months. Yep.
I was just going to mention there's a lighthouse near there too, isn't it? Cape
de Kudat.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's quite
I think I do.
photogenic.
Yeah, I'll just bring that up.
It's definitely one of those places, KI, where it's its own trip, isn't it? I mean, you could come to South Australia, but you could just go straight to KI and have more than enough to do.
Yeah, we spent 5 or 6 days there, and I felt like I was just starting to get to know the place.
Yeah. So I've been there probably around 4 times, and each time there's been something new to offer. I don't think I have my Cape pictures here, but here we go. So I've only got some daytime shots, but it's a pretty photogenic lighthouse, let's say, with the red top and the way the walls are constructed and so forth. There are quite a few good-looking lighthouses around KI, actually. So the other one that's good to shoot is Cape Willoughby.
Okay.
That's right on the far east, and I'll just bring up Google Maps. So heading right over to the other side of the island, that's Cape Willoughby. So you can't get any more east than that. And if you wanted to, you could stay at those lighthouse keeper cottages there as well. Pretty basic accommodation, but it would give you very easy access to all of those spots.
Awesome. It also sort of, I guess, strikes me after you've gone through all these pictures that even though they had the fire and maybe the actual like the landscape itself may be damaged, there's still more than enough to shoot there from a coastal perspective and all of that anyway. So
yeah, most definitely.
And I think they'd probably really love the support with people going over to visit when it's finally able to happen. So
yeah. No, I think there's a lot of local businesses that are struggling, a lot of closed signs on the main street of Kingscote and so forth. So certainly we tried to support local businesses and so forth when we were over there.
I remember they had the campaign for the locals and people to go over there to support the island after the fires, and then they had, I think, a lot of people responded to that, and then of course COVID came, and so it's just been slammed,
just devastating.
like a double whammy. Yeah.
But South Australia, certainly since the restrictions were lifted and we were able to travel around the state, wherever we've gone has been quite filled with people visiting locally. So it does stand a chance in terms of local tourism supporting itself. So that's a good sign.
What's the current status in South Australia with travel and COVID and borders?
Within the state, it's free travel. So there's because there's only I think the last active case was now several days ago, and most of the cases we've had are either known transmission from a contact or someone who's returned. So there's actually no issue coming in. But we've got hard border closures with New South Wales and Victoria, and anyone coming in from those states has to quarantine for 14 days, basically, and get tested if they're coming from Victoria. So pretty strict measures to try and keep it from a second wave here in Adelaide, in South Australia.
They seem to be one of the first states to really push opening, is the impression I got. Is that like an ethos of the state, or is it about how much they need tourism to keep the economy going, or what was that?
I think it's more that they just had it under control, or more so, wasn't it? Like the risk
was
lower.
Pretty much. I mean,
control of them, and we're not pushing it as hard.
Yeah, I'm not sure from a political standpoint what was going on, but certainly the bulk of our cases were from travel. So there were very few cases of community transmission, even with that first wave. So I think there was a bit more reassurance that once the case numbers had dwindled down, that if we only got imported cases and they weren't just popping out the community, then it was good. We also had a testing blitz prior to all of this as well, where anyone with so much as a sniffle got tested, and all of that came back negative. So, you know, I'm still hoping very, very hard that no cases do pop up, because I think everywhere there's just complacency that you can see in terms of social distancing, both in the hospital and in the community.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, as a practitioner, Dylan, you've got probably a bit of a different view potentially of where to from here, or you know what the future is going to hold for us in the next sort of year or so. Do you have any thoughts about where you see it heading in Australia and how we're going to manage things in the longer term?
Yeah, I don't. The short answer is I'm not sure, but I also don't think we're going to get rid of it completely. Like I don't hold that as my hope as a strategy worldwide. So the vaccine as well, I don't have huge hopes as to how effective it'll be. Like I get the feeling that if it's going to be successful, I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but maybe it'll be as successful as the flu vaccine. And if it is, then it'll mitigate a lot of the cases. But the difference between COVID and flu is that a lot of the people who get it, certainly our experience in South Australia, these were all fit travellers. They were old, but they were fit travellers, so they were independent, and yet some of them still kind of got extremely unwell and ill, whereas if they've got the flu, you'd expect them just to have shaken it off, basically. And a few of the deaths as well shocked us, because they weren't particularly unwell with a lot of health problems.
Mm.
Very sobering to think.
Yeah. But yeah, I think my main
potential longer term effects too that people aren't sort of as aware of yet.
Yeah, our cohort in South Australia is far too small to make any, I guess, meaningful conclusions from. I think the Victorians will probably will be the centre where all the information about long-term complications and things will come from, because they have a much vaster demographic of people and numbers of people to see what's going on in the long term. But certainly I haven't heard, for the 100 or so people who are hospitalised in South Australia, I haven't heard too much about them developing any long-term complications and needing to come back to hospital with them. So that's a good sign. But as I said, very small numbers and a select group of people who are otherwise well enough to go travelling independently.
Any thoughts about how to manage travel around globally if or when it comes up? Do you think they're going to, like medically, that must be a big part of how the profession would be involved in that? Whether people would have to have certain testing potentials at airports, or I was just curious about.
Yeah,
I spent so much time just getting through every day. I haven't really spoken to many people that have thought a bit further down the track.
Yeah, I guess it depends what the worldwide strategy is, I suppose. If we're going for eradication, I just don't know how realistic that is. But if we're going for mitigation, then it's really going to be a bit of a whack-a-mole kind of strategy. And your strategy, I think, probably needs to be one, if it's going to be, mitigation and so forth, that lockdowns come into place when it starts to look as though your health system might not be able to handle it. I'm not sure. Because if you do let it go unchecked, which is what a lot of people are saying, and just get herd immunity, then you run the risk of completely overwhelming the health system. And then the problem with that is that people with other medical problems then don't get the care that they need as well, because your hospital's full of COVID. So I think that's from a health perspective, that's probably the major consideration, and at what level of community transmission is going to be acceptable for you to have your health system not crumble in a heap, essentially. In South Australia, because of our low numbers, we've gone with a very strict strategy. In fact, from the start, they were admitting everyone with COVID until we couldn't admit everyone. And then we just admitted the people who were sick. So I think that's probably part of the reason why we were reasonably successful in South Australia, in that we had a very low threshold to just isolate people in hospital.
So switching gears a little bit. So looking ahead for yourself as an image maker, do you have a kind of purpose? What sort of motivates you in the years ahead, do you think, in terms of what you want to achieve or accomplish, or how you want to evolve or grow? Or do you have any particular aspirations to create something in particular, or are you just quite happy just for its beautiful kind of personal, valve, I guess, for the other challenges in your life to just sort of solve it?
Yeah, look, I think I'm the type of photographer who doesn't have a mission statement in terms of my photography. I don't have any particular goals apart from using it as a valve to, release the tensions through other that are causing me strife in other problems of my life, like the work in the hospital and so forth. And so it's really an extension of what I like to do in terms of being out in nature. So if I start to introduce agendas and give myself too many different goals, I've tried to do that in the past, and I think that's put too much pressure on it and taken some of the joy away from it. So for me, I think if I'm to survive as a photographer, one, I don't think I could do it as a full-time profession, because I do need to have time away from it. And thankfully, I do have the medical profession that I enjoy that supports the photography. So I think in the longer term, I would see myself always as being part-time photographer at best, with no particular mission apart from to visit and explore and capture beautiful images and share them with the world and let people know what's out there.
About the most pure mission or way of looking at it you could have. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think if there's any other good that comes out of it, and people want to use the images for good, then I'm more than happy for that. But I'll be lying to people out there if I said I went out there with a specific goal to do this and so forth. Whereas it's really it's actually largely about making sure I stay sane in life.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dylan, because it gets you. I think people sometimes have expectations of you as a landscape photographer, and I know we've discussed this before, and it's come up quite a few times about environmental stuff and that sort of thing, and the fact that you don't have a mission and that you do it just because you enjoy it and that sort of thing, it's something that sort of gets you into, I don't know, what's the best way of putting it?
It gets me into trouble sometimes, I think.
You know what I'm saying, though?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You know the situations you've been in personally with having to negotiate the minefields around this sort of thing. And one thing I do admire strongly about you is that you see both sides of the story all the time, and you're very diplomatic with the way you approach your philosophies in photography.
Yeah, generally speaking, as a life philosophy, I'm not Buddhist or anything, but the middle road is a good path. I generally find. So if there's even something as basic as the post-processing debate and so forth, I try everything and come up with something that suits me, and I try to understand why certain people do things a certain way. And if that brings them joy, all power to them. But I think as long as people realize that what they're doing also has an impact on others, that's probably something that everyone needs to be aware of, instead of just making the argument, well, this is what I want to do, etc., etc. In anything in life, I don't think you can be a bubble. You do need to consider the impacts of your own actions on other people, whether you like it or not. That goes for me too, yeah.
Yeah. It's something. I mean, people that have known me, for example, for a long time know that I've been probably a little more hot-headed in years past with the way I've approached certain subjects and that sort of thing. And I think I've mellowed a lot and in that regard, and I try and see both sides of the story. It doesn't mean that I don't have very strong personal philosophies on things, but I've seen both sides of the story, from the type of harm that putting pressure on people can do, and you're certainly one of those, a role model, if you like, in that you're a calming influence in those debates and that sort of thing. And it's I think it's important that we do take a step back and try not to let our own philosophies taint the way that we interact with others.
Yeah, I think you're perfectly right in terms of having strong views, and I have strong views, but those strong views are left for me and Marianne to talk in private, or talking with, close friends and things like that. So not everything has to be aired on social media, I don't think. If you need to debrief about something, you know where you stand, the people who are around you who know who you are in real life. And if you've got a strong social network and so forth, you can have the confidence that they'll always have your back. So yeah. I don't feel the need to kind of, display what I feel too much on social media, which is why I've tried to remain very kind of apolitical, I guess you'd say.
It's certainly amazing what sort of impressions people can get of you over social media if the only thing they know about you is what you post on social media. And I know, I've fallen into that trap in judging people for a start, and also I know that the way that I've been judged in some things on social media is not me at all, and it really is it can give you a real false sense of what a person is like, and it can be quite hard to judge. And I think that's probably the take-home message, that you can't really judge a person based on what they write on social media. There's no nuance of speech or anything like that. It's really quite a sterile way of expressing yourself, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had a conversation with someone who private messaged me, and I was quite shocked that he started mentioning that, you seem like quite a nice guy, but I've heard that you're very arrogant. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what I said or did to get that, but it does make you wonder, like, what did you write that was taken slightly out of context or whatever. But yeah, that was certainly what he'd heard about the grapevine about me through social media, that I was some arrogant dude.
I guess the reality is the more that you put yourself out there, the more you're exposing yourself to that kind of criticism or misunderstanding and that kind of thing. So it's all part of the joy of being on the social side of things. But it's
right,
for all of the downsides, of course, there's some massive benefits as well. So it's so important to look at it as a whole. I just thought I've just got a few questions that have popped up on YouTube.
Yep.
Cam Wilson's saying that he loves your Debreezied series.
Right.
Yeah, so you've got some Debreezied fans there.
Yeah,
Have you brought out a Debreezied calendar yet?
I haven't. I reckon I've got a whole folder of Debreezied shots.
What's the breezy?
Debreezied is a term invented by a US photographer, David Thompson. He basically did #Debreezied anytime he got caught out of position with some amazing light, like from home or on the car from away from coming back from work or something like that. So that I think that's where it stemmed from.
Do you know where the reference actually comes from?
David, yeah.
Is it just a word he invented, or it must be related to something?
And I presume it's something to do with releasing gas. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah. I don't have my Debreezied folder immediately.
No.
Here we go. House. Here we go. All of these ones with the house.
Oh wow, that's a lot of wow.
Well, that was a favourite.
Yeah. They come. You post them with very much a regular or with regularity, Dylan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done any for a while, but Charlotte looks Debreezied there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so those are sunrises and dawns from my backyard. So yeah.
It's nice to have a term for that when it happens, because there's no real one word otherwise to describe that.
That's right. Yeah.
FOMO sort of feeling. Yeah. And then we've just had a question. If you know where the rocks on KI are that are from a Colorbond ad, is that are you familiar with that ad that has?
Yeah, that's with what's his name, the photographer.
Murray Fredericks, was it?
Murray Fredericks. Yeah.
Murray Fredericks. I think isn't that Crescent Head?
Oh, okay. I don't think I've seen the ad. So
it's that rock where Will Patino's got the shot framed in a cave with a rainbow.
Yeah, if that's the one, if he's got the rainbow above it, then that would be Crescent Head. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, if it's the Murray Fredericks ad, I think that's Crescent Head.
Okay.
So where's Crescent Head? Sorry.
That's in New South Wales.
Yeah, Adam Williams on there.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, yes.
It could be. Does it have any similarities to the cave, the kind of overhang cave near the arch? What's it called? The Admirals Arch.
Admirals Arch. I'll show you a picture of that. It's kind of different.
Those mixed up, maybe, or.
Let me show you.
Yeah, I didn't have a tripod when I was there because it looked like it was about 18 stops of light range when I was there.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. And the trouble with Admirals Arch is there's prevailing westerly winds always blowing in, and there's always just droplets spraying into you. So,
and lots of people.
Yeah, and lots of people walking on a very not unstable, but vibration-filled platform. Yeah. So that's what Admirals Arch looks like. So not really quite the same as Crescent Head, I'd imagine. Though the sloping rocks are kind of similar, I guess.
And we've also had a question if you do any city shots or have taken many shots of the Adelaide city itself.
Very rarely, but I think I should, because particularly since North Terrace has been done up.
Okay.
At the western end where the new hospital is, with the Terrace, the Dental Hospital and UniSA, there's a lot of good, and the Samri building that looks like a cheese grater.
Yes.
There's a lot of good kind of architectural shots that could be had on North Terrace, I think.
Yeah, I've also enjoyed. I did do one shoot there when I went home to visit, and that new footbridge that goes over the Torrens. To Adelaide Oval, and that's quite photogenic with the is it still the Hyde or the Intercontinental behind?
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite a iconic sort of view of Adelaide. So
just going back to Murray Fredericks, it appears it was on Kangaroo Island.
Oh, was it? Is it on YouTube or?
I'm just reading here. Appearing as himself, the adventurer, photographer, and artist, we see Murray in his element as he explores the remote south coast of Kangaroo Island and salt plains of South Australia. So if you put Murray Fredericks Colorbond in,
I'll see if I can identify it.
And go to.
Is it that first image? Is it?
Yeah. Go to that, and it's a flip or something. Go to the flip.com.au, and you'll see the stuff.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of salt lakes around Kangaroo Island, but I haven't actually been to them.
Yeah.
Oh
look,
no, I
this
think
is
he
a-
means his Lake Air
The
stuff.
rock, yeah, the
Um,
rock shot in particular.
Of the rocks that were in that flip thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You haven't got the right page there. But yeah.
Which one is it?
So the rocks that you can see in those up the top
The first two
top
shots.
left.
Oh, these two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks more like Crescent Head, doesn't it?
Well, it's what it
yeah.
says. It's a remote south coast of Kangaroo Island, and I suppose there is a fair bit of coast.
Yeah, there's heaps down there, like along that whole.
Yeah.
Basically, it could be. I mean, it could be somewhere. Whoops, gone way too far.
Yeah.
I would just be guessing, so I don't think I
Oh,
can
there you
give
go.
anything exact about that. But yeah, I'll
Well,
look out for it.
It does seem to be, from what you're saying, you know, there's certainly areas there that have been very little photographed. You could
Yeah.
really, if you're willing to explore, you could definitely make your own images and find your own compositions there, which is
For
always
sure.
an
Yeah.
exciting thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, well, considering he shot an ad there, though, I suppose it would probably have to have some form of close by
Reasonable
vehicle access.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
If you ever look at the topography of Kangaroo Island, there's all these lagoons around, so it might be good for some aerials, Paul. What do you think?
Oh, no, I've been eyeing them up, mate. Don't you worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have that on York Peninsula too, don't they?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
particular-
definitely.
Yeah.
So around here.
Yeah.
So I've been eyeing those, but I just haven't been up in a
look at
plane.
so have you shot much around the York Peninsula, Dylan?
So we've mainly had kind of family holidays there, so I haven't had a lot of opportunity. But what the one trip I did explore was around here in Foul Bay, overlooking Kangaroo Island. So it has a lot in common with the Kangaroo Island type of. And look at all this coast here.
Wow.
Yeah. So basically, I did go there one morning, and the conditions were kind of okay. Yeah, so this is the type of shot, so like granite boulders again, and just very rugged coastline down there. So prime for exploring as well at some point.
There's some really great beaches. Is that is that Moonta, one of those ones?
Yeah, this one's Moonta Mines.
Yeah, that's a great, like you know, a location that probably hasn't been photographed too much, but it's, you know, it's quite a stunning subject.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd done a fair bit of Astro there, and I think taken the family there as well. So my niece got in on the action, taking some of this stuff as well.
Awesome.
It looks like it's a fair drive to the York Peninsula, and then, you know, further afield to what's the other one on the other side?
Yeah, so York Peninsula is not too bad. It's probably about 2 and a bit hours to Ardross and James Well area, and we tend to go there for crabbing. So there's not actually a lot of landscape stuff there. It's just kind of flat, muddy beach. But further down, certainly from Edithburgh onward to Innes National Park, there's some amazing stuff there that I'd have to do a dedicated trip down one day. And the only time we visited Eyre Peninsula, which is like driving to Melbourne, it's kind of 8-9 hours drive to get to Port Lincoln. Once again, amazing dunes around Coffin Bay. And I photographed some of these, and they're just incredible, like pure white dunes that just go on and on.
And that's for Murphy's Haystacks. Oh, that's a bit further.
Yeah, Murphy's Haystacks is up at Streaky Bay.
Yep.
So around, where is it? Not as far as, yeah, Streaky Bay here. And Streaky Bay is, again, an amazing place to visit, because at low tide, you can walk out at ankle deep for a very long distance, just into vast blue, basically, if it's a clear day. So that's a very good location to head back to. But in terms of, this is probably one of the first Milky Way panorama shots I took. And at the time, I didn't even know about this thing called zodiac light, and I tried to edit it out, thinking what was going on there. So I was like, but yeah, now it's like, okay, maybe I better put it back in. But yeah, the Milky Way pano at the time was a fairly rare thing. So I did a few for a while. Then once again, as it became more popular, I started going on to other areas of photography, I guess.
Cool. That's an amazing.
So they're Murphy's haystacks.
It's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So it's from Streaky Bay. They're just out in the middle here somewhere. Just some granite tours.
Yeah.
About half an hour up from Streaky Bay. So completely free of light pollution. So really excellent for kind of night photography.
How big are they relatively? They look large.
They're probably about 4 or 5 meters. They're not that big. Yeah.
So a bit like, have you been there, Luke? Like Castle Rock, maybe?
I think that'd be a little smaller, but yeah, I haven't been out there. I actually haven't really shot on the Eyre Peninsula. It's definitely on my to-do list. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So
I was saying to Dylan before the show, and maybe for those watching as well, like I'm actually South Australian, but every time I go home, it's more about family, and so I don't really take as many pictures as I probably should of South Australia. It's probably my weakest portfolio of the country, actually. So there's still a lot for me to do over there. So that's always good to know.
So if you're interested in dunes, the Yanabee dunes near Streaky Bay, another kind of excellent dune system to shoot. So there's no shortage of that kind of scenery, as well as some very towering cliffs.
It's like pretty interesting aerials there too, Paulie.
Yeah.
Radar's out, mate. I'm scaring away on my phone right now.
Yeah. I've been eyeing a lot of these, but then I think they're just kind of like on the wish list because I haven't actually got up in a plane, apart from in Tassie, funny enough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was some good flights.
Yeah.
It's peer pressure down here, isn't it?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, the Sharinga Cliffs are one of the highlights of Eyre Peninsula as well, if you do get to go there.
Is that more Nullarbor? Was it further?
No, that's it's in between Coffin Bay and Streaky Bay.
Oh, okay.
So very remote part of the world. There's a pub in the middle of nowhere else road. I love that.
Streaky Bay drive time from Adelaide. Is that like 10
Streaky
plus?
Bay? Yeah, probably around. I don't know. Probably about 8-9 hours, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dylan, I wanted to ask you. There's a lake. Is it Lake Bonnie?
Lake Bonnie, yeah.
That a lot of people shoot. I think I saw some in your folder before.
Yes.
Where's that?
Lake Bonnie is in the Riverland, and I think Luke wanted to briefly talk about Manham Falls as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So
sort of in that area.
The Riverland, that's Lake Bonnie there. So it's near a town called Barmera. And once again, because you can walk 360 around it and there's dead trees all around, it's a any time of the year type of shoot. The only thing is that you might, if you're shooting kind of back towards Barmera, you might get some light pollution, and Berry is in the distance as well. So there is some hints of light pollution out there, but it's pretty good night skies out there. And I do most of my shooting from around this coast, the northwest coast, because that's where I found the most kind of I guess appealing stumps and so forth to shoot. So I think I do have that up.
And I guess that's probably more drivable too if you wanted to even do that for a
there and back.
3 hours or something, isn't it?
Yeah, 2.5, 3 hours. So yeah, Lake Bonnie's really good for Astro. This is moonrise, Milky Way rise.
Awesome.
And yeah, if you get a calm, still day with the right conditions, some pretty amazing stuff from there.
Yeah, nice. Is that an artificial lake then with the trees drowned in it, or?
No, I think it used to be a loop. It used to be a loop in the river that it just became a lake. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's my understanding. I might be wrong, but I remember reading a sign about it when I was a kid.
Surely there'd be a fair bit to shoot, or at least look around with the riverlands there. I'm just looking at it on Google as well, and
definitely
looks like a really interesting sort of landscape all through there.
Yeah, I wanted to get into kind of these areas around the gums around the river here, the gums that are actually alive, not dead.
Yep.
So that's one thing, and there's a few kind of cliff top bends as well that are good for shooting. More around. I'll just get up Swan Reach.
one good way to see the river is actually to do a houseboat and cruise along, and then you can kind of pull up to a location and photograph there for the night. So it's always a nice way of doing it.
Yeah. So there's this the Big Bend where people, you know, I've actually shot from there yet, but people tend to shoot that curve of the Murray River. I'm not sure if you've seen those shots. It's a curve to the right that most people tend to shoot from the cliff top.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so lots of stuff to shoot there, and Walker Flat has some amazing kind of golden cliffs as well that light up at sunset that I've only tried to shoot not very successfully a long time ago. And that's quite accessible from Mannum, basically.
You can get some beautiful shots of the River Red Gums too, and if you get a bit of mist or something like that, you can get some really nice sort of iconic sort of Australian river shots as well through there.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'll just show you. Even around Mannum, there's some pretty good stuff on the river. So in 2012, we got a nice kind of foggy morning, and so that's the kind of shot you can get.
Oh wow!
Just looking at the river there. So I didn't really do much to that. Just went bang, bang, bang to a shot of pano of this mist on the river. So that's the kind of scenery you can get around Mannum. And in terms of
Falls as well, I just adore your shots from there, and it's sort of a more obscure location as well. So obviously, you time it with the actual, you know, water flowing and that kind of thing, which probably isn't as common in that sort of part of the world.
It's extremely hit and miss, and this year there just hasn't been enough rain for it to be of any decent flow. And the problem is if there's too much rain and it's really torrenting, then it just ends up being a foam bath as well.
Oh, right.
So it's one of these things where you just need to get it just right. And I think it's around this time of year that I normally go for a visit. So if we get a little bit more rain, I might take a trip up there one day. But it's actually it's quite well signed, like it's straight off the road to Mannum. And before, in the past, I used to park at these lower car park and then have to, hike my way up through the creeks and so forth to get to where I shoot, which is up around here. But now they've actually opened up a car park, so you can just drive straight up and walk straight down to it. So the location is probably the best stuff is around about up here near the upper car park. So very easy access. The only thing you need to watch out for is because it is, smooth granite, it's very slippery when it's wet. So you just got to take care. But some of the shots from Mannum Falls, there's a pool there that always seems to half fill with foam and not
like
on
the
the other
yin-yang
half.
sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. So that's probably the ideal kind of amount of water where you don't get too much foam happening.
Yeah.
But you can go upstream if it is kind of too heavy. Like I shot this because when I went to the falls at the bottom, literally there was foam flying in the air everywhere. So there's no kind of decent way to get a kind of clean shot. So this is further upstream from there. And even looking downstream, it lines up with the sun pretty well at certain times of year. So this was in very, very low flow, and you could see like all the algae building up and so forth. So it was a bit of a sad state for the river at the time, but pretty good lighting conditions, fortuitously.
Yeah, it's always nice to see some really beautiful shots from an area you sort of hadn't really thought of before. Is that something you sort of came across, or you just thought you'd check it out, or in terms of getting to Mannum Falls to shoot?
In terms of getting to Mannum Falls, basically we had a trip to the Riverland planned, and so I basically just did a bit of Google Mapsing to see what there was in the area to potentially shoot. And Mannum Falls look really interesting with all this rocky stuff going on. And then on the Google Maps, if you do the explore function, you can often get a rough idea from people's snapshots as to what the topography might look like, and then where you might want to potentially explore further to kind of take more photographically or artistically oriented shots.
Yeah, that's a really great I guess, tip or in terms of research and that kind of thing, being able to find those sort of shots and seeing the potential there and seeing what you can make of it. So
yeah, that's right.
Some locations like that too.
Yeah. So yeah, you can just for instance, I've shot this particular section before, and it's quite difficult to shoot because of a deep pool there. But you see a snapshot like this, and you think, well, maybe I could grab the waders and get a very dynamic shot at the base and something like that. And so you go for it one morning and see if you can find it, scouting around in the dark.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, well, we've sort of hit our 2-hour time frame. Do you have like any sort of maybe last photos that you'd like to, you sort of feel as sort of sums up your maybe favorite spots or?
Oh yeah, well, we didn't talk about one of them.
Oh,
I just finished up with the Limestone Coast.
oh yes.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
maybe a good one to finish. And look,
Yeah.
why don't we bring up one of the favorite conditions I've had, which is down at Robe. So there's this obelisk sitting there right at the tip of the limestone. It's
You
probably
did really
about
well
the
in the
top of
Pano Awards
ocean.
with this one, was it? Or
Yeah, I think that came fourth in 2013 or something like that. But that was just an amazing, like I've never seen like anti-crepuscular rays like that, because the sunrise was actually behind me on that occasion. And so this just kind of exploded. I was actually shooting at the Jetty opposite this. And when I started seeing what was going on opposite the sunrise, I had to kind of change plan. So yeah, the whole Limestone Coast is, it's really like Mornington Peninsula, but just along the whole kind of South Australian coast, heading down from Robe down to Mount Gambier area. And one bit I did a lot of exploring around recently was around Cape Northumberland, which is just off the Victorian border. And I came across this once again from Google Mapsing again, just looking at the potential areas of interest. Oh, gone too far. Yeah, so around Port MacDonald here, South Australia's most southern point, and I saw all of these here, and I thought, well, this one looked really interesting, yeah, because it looks a bit like a trident. Yeah, and then so I hadn't seen any pictures of it, so I just thought, well, what happens if you just walk out there and have a look, and lo and behold, there's this kind of rock formation sitting out there. So
that one on the right looks like, is that birds on it, or is
all birds sitting on it.
Yeah.
So that's Cape Northumberland is a new favorite location, and there's all sorts of this kind of stuff along the coast down there that's worth photographing. That's the Pisces Star shipwreck, I think, at Cape Banks.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and Robe, this the SA version of Dragon Head Rock.
It's almost exactly the same.
Yeah, pretty much.
With the water that tumbles down in the foreground. I mean,
yeah. I must say, to get a shot like this, you do have to get a bit sketchy. Let's just say. Yeah.
Yeah,
but that is one of my favorite locations to shoot.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, not some. I shot once at Robe, just on the way through, and yeah, it's definitely the coastline's so different to a lot of South Australia and many places in Australia actually. So it's another one of those places where you could certainly make your own compositions like you have there. So it's they're really beautiful shots there. Yeah. All right. Well, look, we might look at leaving it there, and really thank Dylan for his time tonight and talking to us about some of the awesome spots in South Australia and around Adelaide that you can photograph. And Dylan's obviously got a hell of a lot more work from all parts of the globe, so it's well worth checking out his portfolio and his website, Everlook Photography. Is it everlookphotography.com or .com? And checking all that out. And I think he's also got some post-processing tutorials on there as well, which would be a really fantastic resource, because he's very, very skilled in post-processing. Do you do any private tuition at all with post-processing, Dylan?
I used to, but then I stopped because we got a bad connection. But I could potentially start it up again because we got NBN recently. So something that might be on the cards.
Yeah, definitely. But I've always respected his post-processing prowess. So thanks so much for joining us, Dylan. And it's lovely to have a chat with you again. And hopefully it's not too long before we can do another trip in Tassie or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah,
enjoy that.
can't wait to see you back here, mate. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other platforms that you enjoy sharing on that you'd like to invite people to have a look at?
I guess the main ones that I share on are Instagram as Everlook Photography. And I still post occasionally on 500px just because that's where I used to. I don't think too much of that platform anymore, but yeah, I've limited my reach on certain platforms. Flickr, if you want to look at really good quality photos, I think Flickr presents the photos better than any other site that I've had. So I put a stream of photos up there as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much again, Dylan. Next week, do you want to talk about next week, Paul?
Yeah, actually, I've just had a few messages tonight already while during the show was on. We've got we're going to travel a little bit further afield. We're going to go to Iceland.
And Dylan could speak a fair bit about that too. I think he was probably one of the first lots of photos I saw come out of Iceland was from
my shots are old hat.
did it well before it was kind of like the popular spot. Yeah.
Well, if you want to tap into the show, we're actually going to have one of our presenters live from Iceland.
All right.
Serena's coming on, and she's currently living there, and she's been working and running some of the professional tours over there for a while, and she's actually quite excited to share a lot of the places that many people haven't seen, and a lot of the off the beaten track. And I'm personally very interested in getting a sense of the insight to the culture and the people and the life of actually living there. You know, it's become one of the great icons of landscape photography in the world, and yet people just whip in and whip out. And to have someone who's got Australian eyes and culture, who's right in the heart and the middle of it, I'm really curious to get a sense of place and community and how they view photography over there as well, which has become quite an interesting part of their culture through tourism in particular. And now they're having the opposite experience where there's no tourists. So that's had its own impacts. And we're also getting the current Australian Photographer of the Year, Matt Palmer, who's also done a lot of personal work over there himself. And we thought we're going to have them both on the show at the same time. So presenting in different ways with different stories and just keeping that little tingle of inspiration alive. And Lucky and I are starting to think a little bit more abroad in terms of getting people. We had someone from New Zealand last week and Iceland next week, and we have a lot of connections with people around the world. It's just a matter of trying to get them at the right time. But luckily for us, it's only 9:30 in the morning in Iceland when our show's on, whereas in California, it's like 3:30 a.m. So there's only certain places around the world we could probably get away with live. But that's, yeah, it's an interesting part of just coming to terms with being in one place is still being able to travel in the mind and through the inspiration of other cultures and other peoples. And I think it's kind of important to somehow keep that alive, because there's a danger of that fluidity of borders of drying up and cementing a little bit in our daily lives. And I feel like if we can keep those borders open virtually, that's probably a healthy thing.
Definitely.
And I'm probably the only landscape photographer
have something to look forward to. Yeah. Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, yeah, so there'll be the same time.
I've been admiring your work from afar for a long time, and we haven't had a lot of time one-on-one, but perhaps the door's a little bit more open now. That I'd appreciate that.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you at the same time next week. And have a great week, and we'll catch you then. All right. Bye.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dylan. Cheers.
Thanks so much, Dylan.
Yeah,
Bye.
no worries.